Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And this one, unfortunately, is a horrific subject, and it's the rise of drug deaths in Scotland for the year 2023. Now, the information I've got is being reported in two newspapers so far today, the Daily Express and the Daily Record. And that's where I got this information, which was supplied to them by the Scottish Government. And we have seen a rise of 10% in drug deaths in the year, totalling 1,197 drug deaths in Scotland in 2023. That is over 3 per day. That's averaging about 10 every 3 days, just under. It's horrific. And the figure, as I say, has risen. Now, to be fair, it is less than the record amount of deaths, 1,339. But that happened during 2020, and we'll all remember that was during COVID. So I'd imagine that had some impact on the drug deaths, probably because of the social restrictions on people, potentially people doing things, for boredom and other reasons during that time. But for it to rise to almost or over, 3 per day, is horrific. And probably no surprise that the largest city, Glasgow, has seen the majority of those deaths in 2023, the number being 303. That's almost one a day in a city the size of Glasgow. That's horrific. That is no surprise, probably, as the Scottish Government has cut drug services budget. So that will obviously have an impact, I would imagine, in 2024. God forbid we should see even more deaths. This figure is the worst in Europe. And I've been to other countries in Europe and seen from my own eyes the implications of drugs. Lisbon, for example, has got a horrific problem with drugs, and we're worse than them per head of capita. It is quite horrific. The other thing that worries me is the recent announcement. I spoke about this in a video. I'll try and put a link to it up here if I can, where I discussed the newest experiment by Police Scotland to reduce the amount of crimes investigated by the police. Now, if we're going to investigate less crime, you don't need to be a top criminologist to understand the common sense and logic between a direct correlation between crime and drug use, which will lead to even more drug deaths, in my opinion. And I hope I am wrong, but it does scare me somewhat. The SNP claimed it was a national mission of theirs to address this appalling statistic. SNP yet again have failed in their promises to Scotland and promises to some of the most vulnerable people in our society, that is those who are under the fist of an addiction to drugs. Drug problems are not unique to any demographic within our society. It's widespread amongst every demographic in our society. Sometimes when we talk about drugs and drug addicts, there is a picture built up in your mind eye of homeless people, that sort of thing, and that's not always the case. And certainly these people who may be homeless and addicted to drugs, they certainly didn't start off that way. So this is a issue that touches every single demographic in the country. There's probably, most families know of someone or friends of a family of someone who has this horrific addiction. And these people are dying at an alarming rate. It doesn't need to be like that. So we should be wary of how we view drug addicts. They are not subhuman. Many of them start, consequences of life led them to where they are. Nicola Sturgeon did confess a while ago that the SNP had taken their eye off the ball in terms of drug-related deaths. Unfortunately, our party have not taken heed of that apology, or that excuse, whatever way you want to read it. And they seem incapable of getting a handle on this problem. Humza promised to support the right to recovery bill when he, a year ago, was pandering to his party members to vote for him to be the leader of the party. He's now had a year in office as a First Minister, and I would challenge him, his spads or his supporters, to show one item that he has passed or helped with in his 12 months in office that could have a positive effect on this horrific stat. Not only are we the worst in Europe, it's rising. That would suggest to me that it's out of control. And these figures are from 2023. So Humza can't pass the buck to the last person. Okay? You're responsible for this. It is your responsibility. If you don't want to accept responsibility for subjects like this, then don't be the First Minister. Because it's a responsibility you have to accept when you accepted the role and you were sworn in. It's horrific, quite horrific that in this day and age in Scotland, we're not only the worst in Europe, but it's increasing. And I find that very sad. It's a horrific thing to report on. Just to touch on another matter, the story of the £250,000 to UNRWA, story that I supplied the Telegraph with a Freedom of Information response I had, and they done a fantastic story. It's been gathering pace for a couple of days. That pace is slightly going down now, and it's down now to the MPs and the MSPs to challenge this horrific story through Parliament. So now it's time to move on to the second part, because there's a very interesting part of the story that's not yet had the full exposure it deserves. And my task today is to make sure it gets that exposure that it deserves. And it does look, although it's still pre-lunchtime while I'm recording this, it does look as if a national newspaper will run a further story about this £250,000. And it's not about conflict of interest. It's not about Humza overturning a decision made by ministers and ignoring advice by the Department of External Affairs. It's about the same issue, but it's a totally separate and new aspect of it, which is frightening. And don't dare try and explain this one away as being Islamophobic, right-wing, or anything else other than you and your party riding roughshod over the rules of being in government. This is actually a bigger story than what's went out since Saturday. And it should be in the national newspaper soon. If anything happens where it doesn't hit the national newspaper, then I'll run it myself. But putting it in the national newspaper, as we saw on Saturday with the Telegraph run, the initial story, it gets to a far bigger and actually an international audience. Although I have a no bad audience, I'll never match that. So that is why I'm doing what I'm doing. There are some people questioning me on X, saying you're full of nonsense and this story's not coming out. It will come out. And hopefully it'll come out later on today or tomorrow morning in a national newspaper, and we can all follow it up on social media. So thank you for watching this video. Thank you for the support that I've gathered and the people sending kind messages of support since Saturday when we got the story into the Telegraph, and I've not stopped. So, unless you're part of the cult, have a great day. Cheery bye now.